That's something else.
Okay, GBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are open. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to the Town of East Hampton meeting of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals for April 25th, 2023. We have some public hearings. We announce a canceled public hearing this evening, and that is 29 Sanger LLC at 29 Sanger Place in Montauk, and that's Suffolk Tax Map number 300-31-5-4. Our first scheduled public hearing is Mark Obenhouse at 1034 Springs Fireplace Road in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-39-14-19.1. The size and location is 257,603 square feet at 1034 Springs Fireplace Road, Springs. The description is to construct 826 feet of deer fencing and driveway gates on a property containing tidal wetlands with a portion of the fencing to be constructed within wetland setbacks. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 and a variance of 87 feet pursuant to 255-430 of the East Hampton Town Code to construct a deer fence 13 feet from wetlands where 100 is required. The zoning district is A5 residence X flood zone, 2% annual chance flood zone, hazard zone, and AE6, AE7, and VE8, multiple flood zones there. And the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do, pursuant to section 255-9-23 of the town code. We have a certified mailing on April 14th, 2023. Those posting on April 14th.
Thank you. And Member Savarese has the report this evening.
Thank you. Yes, this property is the official notice. It was properly posted. Next, please, Brian. This is the driveway on the south side of the property. You'll see there's a utility pole to the right in the rear of the photo. That is where I believe the fencing will start on the south side. Next, please. This is the front of the house, the view from the Springs Fireplace roadside. Next, please. This is also a continuation of the south property line. The view from the
What was that?
Feedback.
feedback.
Just keep going, please.
This will continue. This is still the south side of the property where the fence will continue. It's actually going to ultimately link up to a pool. Next, Brian. I think I took the same photo twice. This is I should have zoomed this photo. You can actually see where this gate is, the fence is going to end because it's going to actually hook up with the pool fence, which is already, that whole area is enclosed. Next, please. On the north side, this is where they're going to extend out from that side of the house, the deer fence, and then, all right, I just wanted to show that because that's where it's going to start. Next, Brian. This is on the side of the wetlands now. Next, please. We're now on the north side, which is where the continuation of a fence will go. It'll extend, the fence is going to go to the west. Next, please. This is just a continuation of the wetlands. And I do believe where that tree is about where there will be another driveway gate. Next, please. This is obviously Accabonac Harbor, which will remain open. No fencing at all back here. Next, please. This is the rear of the house. Again, this is all going to remain open. No fencing back here. Next, please. Just another shot of the rear of the house. Next. This is a garden area in the back, and as obviously it's all enclosed because the deer are really everywhere in this area. Next, please. This is the pool area, which is all enclosed. And when you come outside this pool now, there'll be I think I even took a photo of it. There'll be a gate they want to connect from the pool to the house. Next, please. This is just another shot of the house. This is coming back from the pool. Next, please. I think that's a duplicate. That's the rear of the house again. And the walkways that lead up to the house. Next, please. This is where the end of the pool is, and you can see it's an enclosed area. And in that space between the pool and the house, that's where there's going to be another gate. Next, please. And this is an adjoining property. I think that might be it.
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions for Denise? No. Hi, Lori, how are you?
Hello, good, thank you. How are you?
Well, you swear or affirm. to
Lori
tell-
Wiltshire for Land Planning
There you
Services.
go. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but.
I do.
Thank you.
So the application has been pending since October of 2021. It is for construction of 826 linear feet of deer fencing, some of which is 13 feet from the wetlands, but separated from the wetlands by a dirt and stone driveway that has existed since 1962. The fence will enclose 24% of the property and protect the open houses landscaping from deer damage, which is very prevalent in this area of town. As a condition of approval, they would install reinforced sediment fencing as recommended by the planning department. However, as the application is only for fencing and gates, the recommended condition that all structures be 2 feet above groundwater and that covenants and restrictions enforcing that condition be filed seems unnecessary. It's just deer fencing and gates. The separation to groundwater is not relevant, and having to go to the county center to record documents doesn't make any sense for that particular condition. And the New York State DEC has approved this project. So I will just submit to you my comments and the DEC letter. Thank you, Laura. And I believe that Mr. Obenhouse would like to say a few things briefly.
Before we do that, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay, on the north side, why wasn't there any thought given to moving the fence and gate more south to meet a better setback?
I think this is a better question for Mark.
Okay, hi, Mr. Obenhouse. All right, I'll wait.
Yeah, why don't you, she's asking why that you're doing it where you're
No,
doing
let him
it.
speak at the mic, Lori. Yes.
Yeah, no, please come.
Yes. What the,
Oh, you want to announce yourself? Just
I'm sorry?
announce yourself.
Oh,
and then-
my name is Mark Obenhouse, requesting a permission to build a deer fence
Are
on.
you an attorney?
I am not an attorney,
Okay,
no.
you want to raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth and the whole truth? Nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Obenhouse.
Hi.
Nice to see you. My question is, one of the standards that has to be met for a variance is this the minimum necessary? And this is a large variance. It's an 87-foot variance, and the wetlands are very extensive. So my only question really is on the north side, was there any thought given to moving the fence and gate a little bit more south to meet a better setback? Because it just appears you're going right to the limit of what's allowed, almost. Is there a reason why you didn't want to go a little bit more south?
Well, that's it seemed like there's a driveway, as you observed, that's been there since 1962. And so it seemed just organically makes sense that the fence beyond that, the side of the driveway, of course, away from the wetlands. As one of the concerns I have, and I'm sure you've heard this before from other people, the area that is being enclosed, I guess you'd say, in addition to just our front yard, I guess, as the photograph showed, walkway to the house and so forth. There's an area that when I acquired this place 25 years ago, you could not see from the door of my house to the road. It was simply, there was growth. And a lot of it. And in the intervening years with the deer population that's there, I have observed it just being denuded to absolutely nothing. I'm sure you saw, Denise, that there's nothing really growing there. So I was really hoping to enclose that portion, which is essentially woods or between our house and the road, in hopes that the understory would be revived and come back, because as you're, I'm sure, more aware than I am of the bird life and so forth, and all the life that exists in the understory of the forest there is just gone. And so it was to create an area where we could recharge that piece of property. By the way, it's not something, it's not a place where we recreate. It's a place where we, want nature to return. And so the logic of that was just to give as much a portion of that, I don't know what amount of land it is, but that be enclosed, and that the trees and brush and so forth can grow. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Sure.
How high is the fence?
Frankly, I don't know what we applied, but I think deer fencing is fairly standard.
8 feet.
Yeah, there you go.
And are you going before the ARB for that?
Yes.
And the gates are 8 feet as well.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Your intention is to create an exclosure, not an enclosure. You want to keep the deer out and therefore regenerate whatever vegetation was there before.
That is precisely the
So the intent is not to create an enclosure for pets or anything else. You just
No.
want to keep deer out. That's
No.
period.
And just to be clear, it's not even to have flowers grow or so forth in the area close to our yard. We're quite frankly fairly used to the deer doing what they do, but I'm particularly, for the reasons I just described, particularly interested that this area be able to have some kind of growth. I mean, there's not even an oak tree goes in, seeds come up, boom, it's eaten. So, and we have an awful lot of deer. I'm sure you've heard this forever, but an awful lot of deer on our property. We've seen as many as 15 on the lawn at any given time. So
One of the concerns that I have is that Accabonac Harbor is a scenic area of statewide significance, which means the vista of the harbor is important to preserve. So my question is, if we start these deer fencing, and we start daisy chaining deer fencing down the property, down the harbor, what visual impact will that have?
no one could see this deer fencing from any, except on our property. I mean, I don't think you'd be able to see it. It certainly doesn't obscure any views at all. It's not, you would see it from the house. Sure.
So it's all in the front yard. It's not going to be visible from Accabonac Harbor at all. It won't change the scenic vista.
I think I was looking at this too, and I think in the front yard where you're this side of the property, you're shielded by the wooded. I think that's going to mask it somewhat, so I'm okay with that. But where it passes the driveway, it seems a little bit more open. I'm not sure.
Well, if you think about the purpose is to regenerate the growth, it will disappear again.
As to your point about what you can see from the harbor, I don't think you could see the fence unless you couldn't see it from the harbor itself. I don't know where you would, I guess if you were to walk into the wetlands, it's kind of like there's wetlands coming up to the road actually. I don't see people recreating there. It's pretty unhospitable, I guess you'd say.
I don't have any further.
I do have a question. In the photos that were produced by the town and the others that were produced by Member Sabri, underneath some of this taller hardwood stand there, it is heavily browsed, and you're saying that's what you're trying to,
Is heavily,
heavily browsed. It's heavily browsed.
extraordinarily so.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you were to get permission to put this fence up, it's your intention to let that go back to its natural state?
That is correct.
Its native state.
That
So
is
it's not the fence will go up and that you'll continue to, not that you have done, but you would keep down whatever vegetation coming in. You've stated it, but I want to make it clear that any approval of this would be based on the fact that we made an improvement on the environment. We're going to improve the
That is
environment.
entirely my intention.
Right, by letting it come back up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we-
As I observed at the beginning, I'm acutely aware of the fact that the area between my front door and the road used to be just completely rushed this high and higher, and it's simply none of it there. And I'm hoping that will come back, and therefore the the animals and so forth, particularly birds.
Is there like a specification on the fence, like an openness,
I'm certainly, I've been expecting it to be a fairly standard fence with as minimal size posts and all that, so that there's the minimize. any kind of
my
issue.
question though is if this gets approved, want to protect it from getting more solid fence in the future, right? I'm concerned about the visual nature of the fence, and if we're doing a deer fence, it should remain a deer fence in perpetuity.
Right. But we'd have to come back to you to do any other type of fencing within proximity to wetlands anyway, and go to the ARB. So I don't think the ARB would permit stockade fencing in this area either. It's not intended for privacy. It's intended.
No.
I get it. I get that. Yep. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Anybody have
you.
any questions?
Yeah.
Brian?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank on behalf of the Planning
Hey,
Department.
Brian, you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So you can see the property up on the screen. It does have the circular driveway. It has been there since at least 1962. The driveway has been in that configuration. The wetlands are immediately north of the driveway on the north side of that loop, and then farther away on the southern side of the property. So that 13-foot setback at its closest point is from the wetlands to the north. If this application is granted, I do think it's important to make some distinguishing findings for something that requires an 87-foot variance, and in particular, the fact that that no clearing is required, and it is on the south side of the driveway where it's closest to the wetlands. So you do have an unnatural area between where the fence is proposed and the wetland area. I think there are definitely a lot of circumstances where installing a deer fence 13 feet from wetlands would be incompatible with the natural resource special permit standards. I don't necessarily believe that this is one of them. There is going to be a little bit of a trade-off here. Deer fences are an impediment for some of our more sensitive terrestrial species of wildlife, box turtles and spotted turtles in particular. Maybe to a lesser extent terrapins, but probably not. But it is definitely true that our upland woods have lost a tremendous amount of their structure. There's no ground cover, there's no shrub layer, there's no understory, there's very little recruitment. And I've seen a number of properties with deer fences outside of natural resources jurisdiction where the contrast is beyond stark. Inside deer fencing, you'll see saplings, you'll see bracken ferns, you'll see stuff that I used to see in the field all the time years ago. I wish if I'd have known this was going to happen, I took more pictures of Solomon seal and lady slippers when I saw them. You see very little of that now, and the areas that are browsed so heavily in areas of around Accabonac Harbor almost look like the woods are maintained, where everything except the tree is clear. But you can kind of tell by the way the properties are used that it's not humans manipulating the landscape on that level. The recommendation for the 2-foot separation of groundwater and the covenants is a consideration for the board. If you don't think that's necessary for something like fence posts, I think that's fine. That is usually a condition reserved for more intensive excavation, more foundation type work. I think that the deer fencing that we see that the code was designed to allow with the building permit, the black gauge wire, the black aluminum posts tend to be, from my experience and my own opinion, is that they do tend to be somewhat visually innocuous and don't stand out. I agree with the board that other types of fencing that are either more visible or more solid would be an impediment to a broader suite of species, and again, would probably be incompatible with the natural resource special permit standards. Beyond that, if there's any questions that I could answer about the property or the area, I'll do my best.
Well, I'd be interested to know what we can do to condition that this area, if it was to regenerate and grow back, be maintained that way. We can draw a line on a map saying that the areas that are closest to the home could still be maintained, but in areas like this, we don't want to see any kind of mechanical maintenance in there. Is that something that's possible for us to do if we were to approve this?
I could bring up the survey. I should have taken a look at it while I was sitting there to see what the clearing line is now. If this area is shown as uncleared,
Yeah.
and it should be, even, deerscaping is not landscaping. If the area is shown as uncleared and you're not authorizing any clearing, you certainly can, I think, emphasize that no clearing within natural resources jurisdiction is authorized by the permit is a reasonable condition. That would limit any clearing within 150 feet of the wetlands. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know how strong the zoning
with
board's
150
jurisdiction
feet
is.
of the wetlands, it's still going to get us well within this deer fencing.
Right.
Because they're only 13 feet now, so we're going to be 130 feet inside
Correct.
for a clearing. So that would achieve a good deal of what we're looking for, I think.
Any other questions?
I still have a concern about the size of the variance, and it's 13 feet away for a different reason. You're concerned with the aesthetics, but the deer, if it does proliferate all the way up, then the deer have to go somewhere. So I do still have a concern about the movement of wildlife.
Was that a question?
Well, will it impede? Well,
It's going to.
it's going to impede,
And if
so
this
that's a good
proliferates
point,
across other properties and continues on.
I think that's
I think, if you take a look at the aerial, I'm going to just step over here. If we're talking about fencing in this area here, for something as mobile, I don't know that there's a more mobile terrestrial species of wildlife than the white-tailed deer. They'll go around it and do so pretty easily.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian. Is there anybody on the public that would like to, you want to come on up?
And I'm not saying this to be humorous, but suffice to say, there is a lot of our property that is still plenty hospitable to deer. I'm sure there's almost 2 acres that they can roam on that we're not in any way closing in. So there's our friends, the deer are going to be our neighbors, and we're very aware of that and glad to have them.
Thank you. Anybody in the public would like to address this? Matt, anybody on the phone?
There's 0 callers, thank you.
Thank you. Denise?
in the matter of the application of Mark Obenhouse, 1034 Springs Fireplace Road, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-39-14-19.1. I make a motion that we close the public hearing and record.
Second.
I'll concur.
Did you get the
I
second?
concur as well.
I'll concur then. Give it to Joan.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael Aiello, or Agello, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but 19 Fenwick Road in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-19-8-21 and 22.1. Size and location is 43,535 square feet at 19 Fenwick Road and 13 Fairway Avenue in Montauk Beach Development Corp., map number 1014 in Montauk. The The description is to merge two adjoining properties and allow a 160 square foot shed, fish pond, stone wall, slate walkway with patio, slate pool patio, southeast patio, driveway gate, and pergola to remain all within the town's jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420, and 5 variances are required. 4 variances from 255-430, minimum wetland setbacks of 45 feet, 40 feet, 41 feet, and 36 feet, and 21 feet are required to allow an existing stone wall 56 feet, driveway gate 60 feet, fish pond 59 feet, shed 65 feet, and slate walkway with patio 79 feet, where a 100-foot setback is required, and 1 variance from 255-1110. Dimensional regulations of 4 feet is required to allow an existing pergola to remain 6 foot from the southern property line, where 10 foot is required, and any other relief necessary from East Hampton Town Code. The zoning district is B residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper affidavit of service posting?
Out of the Hampton Code. We have a certified mailing that was performed on April 4th, 2023, and a posting that was completed on April 4th, 2023, which are at least 10 days prior to the date of today's public hearing.
Thank you.
This is mine.
Joyce? Vice Chair?
Wait for the photos.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I closed something I shouldn't have.
Want to use it?
No. Okay, thank you, Brian. This is the first photo. This is the posting on Fairview with the driveway. It's a rather long driveway. You see from the surveys of those of us here who've seen the survey on both sides of the property, 2 different lots, and they both have long driveways to get into the area of development. This is the official notice on Fairview. Next. Now I've taken a look, and I'm looking basically, I guess that would be southwest. Looking down Fairview, give you an idea of the neighborhood. Next. I've turned and looking the other direction. Now I'm looking northeast on Fairview. That's the neighbor's driveway that we see immediately to the left. Next. I've turned around and looked across from the driveway. I've just looked across. This is their neighbor immediately across the street. Next. This is their neighbor that would be to the south of them. The driveway to the residence that we are discussing tonight is just in the lower right-hand corner of the photo. Next. And this is the residence to the north of them. These are the 2 houses that are either side of the property in discussion. Next. Now I've just turned and I'm looking up the driveway so you can get a sense of it. And if you look at we'll look at the survey and it'll be discussed, but you'll see that the property line for this parcel runs right along the privet hedge. Next. I've come up to the house. There's a garage on this portion that's most easily approached. Then we see the garage, and you get a semblance of a little bit of the size of the structure. Next. I can just see in the left there the car that it was in front of me, and I've just come in, and this is just to give an idea again of the property. You see here, there's a pergola and a gate that's going to lead us into the backyard. We're into the side yard. Next. I've gone through that gate, and I've turned around and looked back at the house here, and I see an entryway here at one portion. Next. And now I've turned and I'm looking back out towards where we're going to be heading to see some of the structures here. Again, just to give you an idea of the property and how it is both constructed and maintained. Next. I walk down a little bit further. I'm looking back up at the house. Next. This is a koi pond, which is mentioned there. You can see koi there reflected out. This is a pond that has an active pump in it, so there's a bit of a water feature happening. Next. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, that's looking down in the pond, I guess.
The
And you can
fish.
see- Yeah, you can see koi swimming around. It's very impressive. Next. Now I'm looking at a small structure. It's on the survey. This is, I'm standing basically in the same spot from the koi, and I've just looked off to the left. And this is a small shed that exists on the property, that's still on the property on Fairview. Next. Turning back towards the house now from that area where the koi pond is, you can see the house and a couple of sections of it. And there's a pool that you can't see, but perhaps you can. There's a little bit of a tarp there to cover, but it's pushed over closer to the house and patios. Next. Now we're going to look to go towards the second parcel. I'm probably standing just about on the property line between the two, or it's in front of me here at some point. We'll get that clarified in discussion with the applicant. But I see here this gateway that leads me back. I'm going to go to the property on Fenwick. And this has got a bit of a pergola. This has been cited in the TAM. Next. This is a structure that sits on the Fenwick property, the property of Fenwick. There's a little driveway that comes in. We'll be discussing the driveway. And this is a structure that's built that's, again, under discussion tonight. This is next year, and next we'll see some interior photos. The door is open, and I've looked to my right, and you can see that it's a storage facility with a bicycle and some other paraphernalia. To the left. Next. I look to the left, and I see more storage. It's important to get a photo of the inside because it was mentioned in the TAM that there was a possibility of plumbing, and we wanted to know clearly whether or not how the structure was being used. So I took 2 photos in the inside. Next. Now I've got my back to that structure, and I see this rather large parking area. This is a driveway that disappears just beyond that truck, is going to head out to Fenwick, and we're on the second parcel clearly, obviously. Next. Here I am I walk a little bit further. Again, there's a gateway that's going to lead to a driveway, which you'll see in the next photos. Next. Again, just a little further in the driveway. Beyond here, we're going to get closer, but beyond here, down in front of me is going to be the wetlands. The wetlands sitting right adjacent to this driveway as we pull through. Next. I've gone through the gate and I've turned. You saw that driveway was going to make a bit of a left. It's done a left, and it's now heading directly out. At the far end of that is Fenwick Drive. Next. I've turned to my right, and I took 2 photos of the wetlands. If you look in the center of this, you'll see that there's water, standing water there. Yeah, thank you, Brian. And other vegetation. Next. And I just went a little bit further to see that it extends. This is a water course. This is a waterway. Water is moving in it currently right now in the spring. Next. I've gone out onto Fenwick because the property had to be posted on both roads, and you can see the posting here on Fenwick. Next, and the driveway, of course. And I've just backed up to give you a better idea of the driveway. You get a sense of the vegetation on the property. And of course, if we look at the survey, we'll realize this is a narrow strip of land that's associated with that parcel. Next. Oh, this is looking on Fenwick. Here I'm looking to the east. Next. And I've turned it, I'm looking back up to the west. Fenwick's slightly smaller, a smaller road than Fairview. Next. Just walking back up to get a sense of, as you approach from Fenwick, I've come up the driveway, and where it makes that hard, not a hard, but a sweep to the right, I can see the gateway that leads me back up to that parking pad. Next.
I think that's the last one.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, Andy?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andy Hammer. I am here representing Mike and Susan Agello. They've been the owners of this property since 2004. Susan Agello is here with me tonight. Mike couldn't make it, unfortunately, but if you have any questions I can't answer, perhaps she can weigh in. I also have Joel Halsey here with me as well, who's equally familiar with the history of this property. I think it's fair to say that the TAM has an underlying theme of a little bit of impatience with the Agellos on on a pretty lengthy and perhaps even conflicting permit history over the years. I hope I can address that as well. One thing I did want to point out is on the survey that was submitted as part of this, there's fencing proposed that lines the proposed scenic easement. We wanted that to be part of the approval tonight. We think it makes good sense if you're going to have a scenic easement to actually have it fenced so that we can't access on the other side. I don't think it made it into the notice, but it is something we'd like the board to consider. One thing that I think is compelling about this application, the Agellos had, as we all know, a completely separate vacant lot. They did secure approvals to build a second residence on this property. Clearly a valuable right. They even invested in the process, maybe unfortunately to the point of getting a health department witness test hole excavation on the property, not an insubstantial cost. However, my clients never really wanted to build this second house and struggled with the advice they were getting. They felt it would diminish all the same qualities of the property that perhaps the zoning board will be looking to protect tonight. After a great deal of consideration, the Agellos determined they're willing to forego the development of this second lot, which is obviously a great financial importance to them, but it also has its own environmental benefits as well as being a mitigative measure. So taking that off the specials menu, this second house, what remains on the table tonight, we think is the best solution for this property: a final merger of the lots, the legalization of all the structures that appear on the survey. All of these structures, excluding the 160 square foot shed, were built prior to my client owning the property. They purchased this from a local builder in Montauk, a guy named George Funk. I don't know if Ed would remember George. The history of this, I don't think detracts from the chance that we have tonight to put this matter to bed and seek approval for what I think are fairly minor accessory structures in return, some of which in certain instances require variances and an NRSP. And in return, this becomes a single house on a single lot with a large scenic easement that affects the bulk of the property. It doesn't appear that there were severely major objections raised by the structures or their proximity to the wetland. They've probably been there for very long. That it wouldn't comply with the NRSP standards or the variance standards applicable in this instance. The wetlands do in fact constrain the building envelope. These are also odd-shaped lots, as I think Ed's cinematic tour de force will show you that they're unusual lots. And these improvements were constructed both to try to meet an achievable setback to wetlands and to work with the residence that was already in construction. I don't know exactly when the original residence was built on this, but I think it was fairly long ago, looking at the aerial photos. I think it appears on the 77 area. No, was it? Oh, well, maybe it was built by George Funk. Then I apologize. I was looking at the aerial photos and I might have confused it. The structures, most of which are very minor: a small retaining wall, portion of the patio, a fish pond, driveway gate, and a pergola. They're all extraordinarily well screened from the road and from adjacent properties by hedges and mature vegetation. I don't think any of them would contribute or cause a detriment to the wetlands or to the character of the community, but all of which have an enormous benefit to the applicant that would justify their approval. A few outstanding items I'd like to address with the board. One is the bluestone driveways. The TAM suggests removal. It's a very thin coating of bluestone. In some areas, it's just the tire treads. It doesn't have a sub base. It's not a whole lot of material. Removing it would probably have no true benefit to the wetland. Frankly, most of the driveway is pretty far away from the wetlands. There's that one area that Ed photographed that it's probably the closest, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of surface water runoff that's going to affect the wetlands. The thin layers, as I think we had pictures we were going to show you, but I think Ed did an honorable job of showing it to you. If possible, I'd ask the board to allow this to remain. If required, we could install small drainage structures that might, counter any impact or any possibility of there being any surface water runoff. And I think if you inspect it in person, you'd probably agree. It's just an ask, a lot of squeezing for not a lot of juice on this property from an applicant who's willing to give up their vacant buildable lot. The scenic easements are proposed on this property. They have not been filed. We would ask that the scenic easement either allow the gate post. There was one section that said we have to remove a gate post. It's like a foot off of the scenic easement. We'd ask that the scenic easement either allow the gate post to remain, or we'll just jog the scenic easement around it so that we don't have to relocate the gate post that was installed. I don't think it'll affect the purpose of the scenic easement or the substantiality of the scenic easement if it remains, and I think that would just make it easier for the applicant to comply quickly. The revegetation is something that we will commit to doing, and will help the applicant's landscaper to submit a plan for the approval that meets with your approval. I might ask that the board consider when we do submit something, if that's a condition of approval, that we also can take in mind aesthetic considerations. Basically, a little more flexibility might be called for other than a low bush blueberry planting on not however many feet centers. My feeling and experience is that if I can convince the Agellos, and it's not going to be easy, Susan's a tough character, to make this a little bit more aesthetic, it can become part of the fabric of the property. And perhaps future owners will appreciate it as well. I mean, it's a lovely property right now. I think if we did the right kind of fabric re-veg, it'll enhance the scenic area as well as the scenic easement, and it might be something that's valued in the future. A lot of times we have problems with people clearing scenic easements. Maybe we could avoid it if we did it correctly. On the timing, perhaps that's where some of the impatience I mentioned is most discernible. The TAM requests that a year be the end date of the termination. Under the town code, I believe it's 3 years. While I understand this is being requested to spur the applicants to action, they have no plans to delay this at all. Susan came here tonight to participate and to be here tonight. This is an important thing for her. I can also tell you that simple building permits take months to secure. Approvals on a re-veg plan, acquiring plant material, all those things. I don't think a full 3 years is needed, but I would want any approval that required re-veg to wrap over 3 planting seasons. We have one rapidly coming up in the fall, spring, and then next fall, I think would be sufficient. I just think that would make it less of a...
So you're saying 18 months?
Yeah, something like that would be fine. I think Ed already demonstrated there is no plumbing in the shed. Truthfully, there'd never be intended to have plumbing in a shed, and we also have to get a CO inspection and whatnot. So it's something that we had no intention to maintain it or to have any plumbing in there, and there would be multiple opportunities that it would be inspected. I think most of these issues are very minor. The Agellos are engaged in the process and understand the application that is before you tonight, probably better than they have any of the prior applications that were in front of you. And I can tell you with authority, they intend to complete this once and for all. The mitigation given up the vacant lot cannot be understated, and I think it goes a long way to mitigating both compliance and mitigation that's associated with the NRSP as well as the variance standards. Other than that, it sounds like you might have some questions for us, and I hope I can either myself or Joel can help answer.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Well, the TAM suggests that there's an effort on the part of the Agellos to abandon a portion of the parking pad that's closest to the...
I'm sorry, do you...
I got to go back and find that. Am I correct with that? Rest of the board know that? I thought there was a comment that a portion of the parking pad was to be removed. Is that not the case?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
You know, the parking pad was put in, that was originally where I think the footprint of the house,
Yeah,
give or take, was, it was designed to serve the...
So on the Fenwick lot, on that lot, I think it's 22.1, that lot, when we stepped out of the formal paved parking area or the gravel parking area, and we sort of have a slope and elevation down towards Fenwick. I had a couple of photos that showed that we had wetlands immediately there and a waterway immediately would be to the north, I guess, of the property. And that's going to be the most sensitive area. Now I see that the fence, you mentioned that there's a fence to protect us from that area, and there's a fence proposed on the survey here. And I guess the planting there and what we do to preserve that is going to be of critical importance, because that's the active portion of the wetland that we see could be most easily blocked, damaged, pollution, not pollution, runoff happening. Right now, it's slightly degraded. There's a bit of a pathway down there. So it's something that's going to require some planting. So I think that's going to have to be addressed if we move any further forward.
You're talking
Areas you come
around
out,
the
Right when you come out and you leave, and there's the elbow in the driveway. If we were just to the north of that, that's where the photos of the wetland were that I took. And I'm saying that driveway is almost right on top of that water course. So that area has had to be carefully maintained and planted with any kind of proposal, any condition, any potential approval would have to be conditioned that that area gets particular attention that we're trying to say. That's important. You know what I'm talking about there, Joel? You see what I'm saying?
Toward
Yeah,
the
I don't
Fenwick
believe that
side.
we had a proposal that's not, that is uncleared area, but we certainly could address it. I'm not as familiar with that area. The good news is the only use of this area is access. So it's not going to be, occupied other than as access, but we can certainly look at that and beef up any restrictions and provide some form of protection. It might even be a good place to have some kind of not a siltation mesh fencing, but, stake straw bales around there as well.
I'll look for Brian's comment on that as well, but it is something when you're there, that's the portion of the property that you see is most directly in contact with wetlands and would have the greatest concern.
Okay.
Now, it says on the survey, a portion of the driveway to be removed from scenic easement.
Yeah.
And there's a number of locations, you referenced the gate earlier, to that effect, and you kept on going there, fine. But so you're asking that we either allow that to be left in the scenic easement? Is that including?
No, I'm only
driveway
talking
area
about the
also?
driveway post, which you'll see, it says portion of drive, fence, and gate
Gate.
to be removed from the scenic. It's like 3 square feet. This area down here, you're talking about, you can even see in the photos, it's basically 2-wheel driveway. We will be able to comply with the relocation of that. Once again, we're talking small distances, but it was really the post and fence that I wanted to see if we could.
The gate, okay. And then there's a fence on the unopened road also. What's the height of the fence that you're proposing here? Well,
The unopened road is Fountain Place here. I don't think that is fencing. That shows the boundary of the scenic easement. That crosshatch is what you're looking at.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't believe
So
there's any
no
fencing
fence
proposed
to
there.
that side.
Yeah, there's some fencing proposed that's adjacent to the house. It says existing, so that is there. But the crosshatch isn't actually fencing. That denotes the scenic easement area.
What kind, I think Terry was asking what type of fencing?
I believe it's standard 8-foot deer fence, right?
So the fence that is proposed is 8 foot?
Yes,
It's existing.
it's existing. It's been there for,
It's proposed to be, some of it's proposed to be relocated.
out of the scenic easement. It's probably, she said, my client is telling me it's 6-foot fencing. But I don't think it's not stockade, it's just, yard guard type fencing.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any scenic easement on this now? I know in the property card, there was something about an acceptance by the town board of a scenic easement.
I don't believe there is a filed scenic easement on
Nothing
this
now.
property as of
Nothing
now. All the scenic easements you see were proposed as part of the prior applications. A lot of these structures had been approved, but we're starting from scratch, so to speak, tonight.
I had one question about the driveway. You said there's no substrate. Would they, I guess, covenant that they wouldn't put one in? They just would maintain it as?
Yeah, what I think would be reasonable is to say you can maintain it, but if you're going to replace it, you would then have to comply with, more standards crushed stone in this area.
Right.
Anybody else have any questions? More questions?
I don't think everything will.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian?
Good evening again, board members. Brian Frank from the Planning Department.
Put the fence.
I think my colleague Eleni Nikolopoulos did a good job outlining the chronology of this property. It is a little a little bit convoluted, and there are conflicting approvals. There was a 2007 approval. These are two single and separate lots on paper, and the northern of the two was approved for a single-family residence and a sanitary system in 2007. Around that same time, the lot to the south, where that property line is, a lot of the structures that showed up in member Johan's photos, the garden shed, the koi pond, a patio there, were very close to the side yard property line. Their legalization required some pretty substantial side yard variances and pyramid variances for the shed. Those were initially denied as standalone applications in 2007. They were approved as part of the merger of the property when in 2015, the property owners came back and they said, we don't want to build a second single-family residence on the vacant lot. We want to legalize these structures. By merging the properties, we're eliminating that property line, and we no longer need substantial side yard variances or pyramid variances. What we do want on the other property is a detached garage and a pool house. And I think it was the fact that that was approved in 2015, since a pool house was part of the approval. There was a question when the shed that was built without a building permit on that property was constructed. The nature of that structure was a fair question. Was it intended, even though it wasn't in the location that the pool house was approved, was that functioning as the pool house that was approved in the 2015 application? So yes, eliminating that lot is a significant change. It's not a new proposal. That's what was baked into the 2015 approval. Some of the frustration is that there was an effort to keep both permits valid. There were extensions of times applied for with both applications, and you can't have one and have the other. It's either an approval for a house as a standalone lot, or an approval for an approval that eliminated dimensional variances from a lot line and approved accessory structures. The two approvals can't simultaneously coexist, and that created some confusion, and then compounded by the fact that you did have some structures built without any building permits at all. So to get to some of the issues that were raised by Andy, I think there's going to be a time when we're going to look at the restriction of bluestone near wetlands. I don't think this is the property to do that on. This is a property where you have a history where there was a known condition for a quartz gravel driveway. This is the second driveway on the property. And I think if you allow it here, you're going to be reminded of that in a lot of subsequent applications. This isn't the only driveway. If it's as thin a layer as Andy believes it is, I don't know that the thinness of the layer is really a consideration for the board, but it should make it easy to remove it and replace it with something more compatible with the board's standard practices. I want to respectfully remind both the board and the applicant that the purpose of the revegetation is to naturalize an area as a buffer to the wetlands. Aesthetics are not an appropriate consideration. If it looks like a garden, if it looks like landscaping, my experience is that people treat it like landscaping. Maybe these owners won't, but subsequent owners will. If an easement is a file document and it should be respected. When we start talking about fabric reveges and aesthetics, I think we risk losing track of what the purpose of that revegetation is, and that's to naturalize this area. There's extensive landscaping in the rest of the property, and that's where those aesthetic considerations belong. This area should be revegetated with indigenous woody species only. In terms of a gate post, whether that's in the scenic easement or the easement dinks around it, I think that's a consideration for the board. The planning department doesn't really have an opinion about that. I will note that driveway, I kind of zoomed in a little bit because when I was sitting in the audience, I don't know how clear that survey is where you guys are sitting. It wasn't very clear to me in the audience, but I do want to point out that, well, it does show up here. You do have this driveway. This driveway functions as a functional driveway because it encroaches on the neighbor to the south. It's not completely in the flag strip. It does have to make an awkward turn to do that. That's another reason I think to consider the materials. I don't know the nature of the property next door or how long that owner will tolerate that encroachment. But again, I think this isn't the right time or circumstance to consider deviating from that the board standard practice of a pervious driveway consisting of the native quartz gravel. Beyond that, if the members have any questions that I can answer, I'll do my best.
I did a clumsy job of trying to explain the waterway there and the vegetation. You did a clarification for us here. What I'm concerned about when I go on the property is exactly down at that elbow that you pointed out is extending onto another man's property. Just right where that turn is where we see the water course coming right almost up against that.
That's where it's
And-
closest, yes.
And there's an area there that's going to require some revegetation. And as you pointed out, not in an ornamental fashion, but in a fashion that's going to be most natural and most naturalized. So that's why I bring it up, because there's some distance from, some of what's been established before is long established, but down in there's a potential for erosion and degradation. So I'd like to see that, and we all do, we like to see that gets properly vegetated. That was my only comment about that. That's it. It's pretty obvious. That's not obvious, but it's a concern when you're there that you make sure that we can do everything we can to protect that little spot. It's not a little spot, but along that driveway.
Lastly, I'll just say in terms of the timing, the planning department does encourage this to get cleaned up a little bit quickly. This does have when these problems stay in limbo, they tend to do just that. They stay in limbo. It would be, I think we'd be a little farther along. There really should have been a revegetation plan in the file by now. It was always proposed in that area. It's
Why are we
it's just
not
another loose
requesting
end.
that?
Excuse me?
Why wouldn't we request that now?
It would be nice if you didn't have to. If it were already in the file in an acceptable form, that's just one more loose end in this application that doesn't have to
But I
be
mean,
addressed. But
Your own TAM suggests that a revegetation plan does get submitted into the record.
yeah, well, yes, but my point is that there could have been one already submitted. It could have already been, an acceptable re-veg plan that's in the file now.
Can you just clarify for the board about the Bluestone areas? Are they both the Fenwick property and the Fairview property? Are both of those pads Bluestone? Or is it
No,
just the one
to the best of my knowledge, I'd have to double check the photos, but to the best of my knowledge, the Fairview driveway is the same as it always was.
Yeah.
The Fenwick driveway is a new one that was covered by a natural resources, at least a more recent natural resources special permit. And that's the one that's, I think, of greater concern. It's also where it's closest to the wetland. The Fairview driveway has a gentle pitch. It comes straight down Fairview. And the impact of that driveway on the wetlands to the east is nominal, if there is any at all. The Fenwick driveway, because of its proximity, because of its steeper slope, is more relevant to the natural resource special permit standards.
I'm saying this because I did the photos and I was there, and I went back to the Fairview side and examined the Bluestone driveway. I apologize if I didn't do a better inspection, but I didn't think I was standing on Bluestone or Fenwick driveway. Examine those photos, but to me, the Bluestone was on the Fairview side, coming up to those garages.
Did I get my streets mixed up?
You think that's the
Maybe it's
case?
me.
You might have said north before, south before, and it was north. I don't know.
So we could look at
The Bluestone's on the fence.
I hope I'm not doing anything. I hope I'm not confusing things. That's certainly not my intent here.
Well,
To my recollection, the newer Bluestone driveway is the northern of the two driveways, and the older driveway is to the south.
Fenwick was the
okay,
Bluestone.
okay. And that's my fault. I apologize for the
No
confusion.
worries.
Any other questions?
Yeah, well, going back to the two approvals that were existed, if this were to be approved, those two are expired and withdrawn.
They're both expired. They're both expired now.
Both expired now, so they are no longer valid. in their
Correct.
History. Yes, okay.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian. Anybody in the public like to address this application? Matt, any callers?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you want to close this out?
Yes.
Andy, you have to, anything to? Yeah, just give you one more.
I think we heard you loud and clear on the driveway. I didn't realize it was going to be such an issue. Certainly that the applicant is here as well. With respect to the re-veg, this is a very small re-veg. I think it's like 3,200 square feet. If this were a much more extensive re-veg, I would have expected, yeah, we would have probably worked something out, but this really isn't a huge area. And I didn't mean to undermine when I say aesthetic, I think you can do re-veges that are aesthetic. You know, you might choose a different plant palette, but they're all going to be on the approved list. I wasn't saying we were going to have arborvitaes or something in there. You know, we're going to try and put a little more thought into it than, hey, we're going to do blowbush blueberry on 1 foot center. I just want it to be something that when it's established, it functions, and, you know, obviously Brian and the board will have the opportunity to approve it. I just think that's a more thoughtful way to approach these than an output like a pro rata, hey, we need so many of these. With respect to the area that you're mentioning with the encroachment, I think that was probably done when they were doing the witness test hole. They had bigger equipment on here, but, you know, that's another area that we could address as adjacent to that, you know, because we're going to have to relocate it onto the property. I don't believe there is anything that, you know, a boundary line agreement or so that was signed with the neighbor. I don't even know offhand who that neighbor is, but we would propose to relocate it and make that part of the re-veg and maybe beef up some of the areas that you're talking there to prevent surface water runoff. That's why I was mentioning stake straw bales or something, just something that would signify this area is not going to be disturbed, but maybe a little planting in there would be a good idea. And as I said, it has no other use other than it's going to be next to the access here. So I think if we can establish that area, it will kind of take care of itself from that point forward.
You don't think we should leave this open for the veg?
Well, I'm going to ask that question. Should we?
I kind of think we should.
But we've made them conditional before based on planning department's approval.
I mean, scenic easements haven't been, I mean, there's
Yeah.
been very
Right,
little
history.
regard here for the environment.
Right, it's,
Well, are we going to leave it open for?
Well, I will say that, you know, it's certainly not that there's very little regard, you know, I mean, we are giving up a full vacant buildable lot right now. And I think that's something that is honorable and something the board should look favorably on. I have no problem working very hard to get a re-veg plan that you guys will approve, but most typically those are done as part of a approval. Furthermore, it's just not that large an area. It's maybe 3,500 square feet, so thereabouts. So it's not like we're revegetating a half an acre or something that is that much significance, but I will, you know, she spoke to her landscaper today and he said, oh yeah, I'm very familiar with it. And, you know, he's going to put something together, but it's just not something typically that I would have presented to the board prior to the hearing. It's usually something I would have done after the hearing.
I'm comfortable with conditioning any approval on the acceptance by the building department.
it's gonna have to be signed off too at the end.
Absolutely.
It gets,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Am I just closing it or we did not? Okay, then in the application of Michael Agello of 19 Fenwick Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-8-21 and 22.1. I'd like to close the public hearing at the public hearing and the record at this time.
Second.
Concur. I concur.
Concur as well. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Okay, next we have 22 Shore Road, LLC at 22 Shore Road in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-131-8-7. And the size and location is 48,327 square foot at 22 Shore Road, Montauk on the Sea, Section A, map 2438 Amagansett. The description is to construct a 2,697 square foot, two-story residence with entry porch, 1,805 square foot of decking, a 240 square foot swimming pool, new sanitary system, dry wells, and approximately 725 square foot driveway with retaining walls, lower level parking, and to clear approximately 7,785 square foot of beach vegetation on a parcel of land containing dunes, dune land, beach vegetation, and tidal wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code is required for this application and any other relief necessary. The zoning is B residence, VE Flaw City flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Council, do we have a proper affidavit of service and posting?
Right, so.
Yeah, we certified mailing. Prior to the research.
Yes, sir. Hello? Hello?
What's that all about? What's going on?
Matt?
All right, we're good? All right. Member McGivern.
Yeah, so I probably should have zeroed in on this, but there was a proper posting. And this is standing across the street looking at the property. It's a narrow in width, and you can see the neighbor to the right. The neighbor to the left is the White Sands Motel. And you can also kind of see that there's a rise in the dune. It's like 2 dunes. Next. It's just it's a closer, I'm walking into the property now. Next. I was trying to capture the height changes as you go up the dune. And also you can see the dune vegetation to the right. Next. That's the neighbor. That's more dune vegetation. Next. My shadow and more dune vegetation. Next. There's a little path that runs through, not quite the middle, but I'm walking up the dune. Next. Now I'm looking down the dune, which gives you a better idea of the height of the dune. Next. And that's the ocean from the height of the dune.
Spectacular.
It's really spectacular piece of property, and the view is lovely. Next. The neighbor has a walkway, which I took a snippet of, and I think in the next picture you can see better. Next. No, that's the White Sands Motel. Next. That's the neighbor's property. They have a elevated walkway out to the dune, out across the dune to the ocean. Next. That's the elevated walkway that the neighbor has. Next. That's in the far right, you can see the walkway as it extends through the dune. Next. That's just a shot of the neighbor's house looking back and White Sands on the other side. So you can see it's a narrow piece of property. Next. That's just looking out to the ocean. Next. That's it.
That's it.
Beautiful.
We have the agent applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and council. My name is Denise Shern, and I'm the attorney for the applicant. I'm with the Adam Miller Group, and I'm here tonight on behalf of 22 Shore LLC, the actual owner of the property, the principal of which is Joshua Young, who's also here in the audience with me tonight. If you have any questions that I can answer and he's able to, I'm also accompanied by his architects from Oza Sabbath. Nile Oza is with us here tonight and will be giving you an overview of his plans that he's created. And I'm also here tonight with my associate, Brian Lacasio from Adam Miller Group.
Thank you. Can we just verify the latest
Sure.
survey? We're looking, I think, of May 19th, 2022. Is that right? Tyler?
believe
is
that
that
is
what you had?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You should, I just want a few little housekeeping things. Want to make sure that you have my narrative that we submitted about 10 days ago. Thank you, because I'll be referring to it during the presentation. I have extra copies if anyone doesn't have it.
I can't find it. May 19th, 2022.
Tyler's, thank you, Tyler, for the memo. Tyler's TAM recommended a revision to the landscape plan, which we did. We submitted it with our narrative, but it's a small version. So I just wanted to hand in a larger version for the board. Also, I requested more information on the cut and fill calculations for the property for the project. We submitted that as well in a smaller version, but here's the larger version. A little bit more. So this is a unique application for me. This property, and thank you very much for the photos. They were beautiful. The property is stunning in nature. It is one of the most aesthetically pleasing properties I think I've ever stood on in terms of the view of the ocean, and it's amazing. The elevations, as you've correctly stated on the property, make that incredible view visible from pretty much wherever you're standing on the property, although there are obviously places that are better suited for the view than others. The reason this application is unique specifically to me, is that it has been before the board, this property has been before the board on 2 occasions, which have been, both applications were denied by this board. They were larger projects that were differently designed, and the board decided that the projects were too aggressive, and the design of the proposed residence was too sprawling in nature, and that it seemed to tower over the other properties in the neighborhood and Shore Road in general. So you wrote a written decision that was spelled out all of these concerns and basically gave us a roadmap to work with. So when the owner first came to me and met with me with his architects, I gave them what seemed like an impossible task, and that was to decrease every number that they possibly could with respect to GFA, clearing, lot coverage, and to make the design as compact as possible, but also maintain the elements the client was looking for. So traditional 4-bedroom house, septic system, small swimming pool, deck. So I set them off on this course that I honestly didn't think they could come back to me with an application that I thought would be acceptable to the board. But in looking at the images and seeing the design, I decided immediately that it was an approvable application and that it was in keeping with your NRSP standards. And I do believe that the 2 members that were opposed to the application at the last meeting might actually be in favor of the application this time. And I'll explain why. First and foremost, I'd like to call up Nile just to show you the design and explain the way they created this house so that it fits into the surrounding community and also works with the contours of the land instead of being built just upon the land. So they've created a tiered structure which takes advantage of the contours of the land without altering them to any major degree. So Nile, if you wouldn't mind.
Good evening. My name is Nilay Oza. I'm an architect and I'm representing my firm, Oza Sabbath Architects.
You want to raise your right hand? Do you affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So when a client approaches us for a design, any design, but particularly this one, we tabulate a list of constraints. And the constraints help us design something that is obviously buildable, but more importantly, it allows us our boundaries, our confines within which to create. These could be the client's desires and needs, the siting of this property, which is topography, views, privacy, climate, the sun, prevailing winds, and very importantly, jurisdiction, what codes apply to this particular property, both local codes and in this case, FEMA. But in this particular case, we recognized that the board, as Denise had just mentioned, had already reviewed the property and had some specific concerns. So we looked at the hearings, both of them, took notes, and came away with two particular comments that in some sense, literally and figuratively bookended our design. The first comment was Ms. Berger's. It was to take into consideration the topography, therefore protect the dune, and the contour line 24 elevation was considered significant. So we took that as one of our bookends. The second comment comes from Mr. Johan, and it was to do with the scale. The first comment is clear in the survey. You can easily recognize that the building doesn't encroach that contour line. And for the second comment, I'd just like a brief flip through of how we came to our design. So the comment was the fact that the previous design was too massive in scale, and actually we agreed. I'll just quickly step away and just show you a few slides that explain to you how we came to our design. Yeah. So this is the site as is. It's just a sketch. You can see the house towards the west is in this view. And the next view is a view of the proposal that was rejected in May of 2021. As you can see, the pyramid line that actually shoots up from the street side makes this design non-conforming. And that's the basis of the comment. I think. What we chose to do, as you can see in the next slide, is to step the design away from the pyramid plane, and that achieves two things. Obviously, complies with pyramid, but it also hugs the structure along the dunescape going up. So working with the dune rather than on it, as Denise mentioned earlier. The last rendering is a view just to kind of express the kind of style of the building. And I'll just end by saying this past Saturday, a jury of my peers recognized these constraints and the skillful nature in which this design had actually been executed, and we were awarded AIA Peconics Unbuilt Award for this year. So with that, I'll hand it over to Denise to continue. I'm here if you have any further questions. Thank you.
That was for that house?
I did, yes. Yes, and they're very large. They're large scale, so they're very So Eli was a bit humble, but last weekend, there was a peer review of
several architects' pieces of works, and one of those was this project. And when the jury actually reviewed the materials or the plans that were submitted, their comment was that it was a thoughtful response to the unique features on the site. They said that they remarked upon the ease with which we can understand the clarity of the design approach that links all the site plan considerations together. So what they recognized, not knowing that we would be before you this week, is that what has been designed here actually fits quite well on the site, according to their standards, which obviously are architectural and not environmental in nature. But it is one of the elements, and it was one of the concerns that the board expressed at the last hearing, was whether or not the proposed home at the time really fit into the scale and character of the community. So in terms of analyzing that, as part of our narrative, we reviewed over 18 properties in the immediate area and provided a summary of them for you in the narrative. But you'll see that the properties on the ocean side of the road are basically the best comps. The properties there are similar in size, although it appears that we are one of the largest parcels in the area, believe it or not, even though we're so narrow in terms of lot area. It's on the larger side. The most recent, I think, and significant application that was approved was actually located at 52 Shore Road. Now that's east of us, a slightly smaller property, and the CO is from 2003. The house was 2,311 square feet, and they came in recently to get an administrative permit to add 430 square feet, making this a total of 2,741 square feet, which is actually larger than what is proposed today. So to back up and explain what we're proposing before you and to compare it to what you saw before, we prepared a chart that is in the narrative on page 8, but you'll see that the proposal right now is for a 2,679 square foot residence. Building coverage is increasing by approximately 200 square feet. That is the only number that I was willing to bend on in terms of accepting the application for submission on our part. And because I understood the rationale behind it, the need for a slightly larger footprint in order to accomplish the demassing, which seemed to be a critical element during the last hearing. The total coverage is 4,055. That's 40% of what's allowable. Site disturbance is 7,785, 50% of what's allowable, and clearing ultimately once we revegetate. And we did get Tyler's comment about, I think, the black pines, and we replaced them with red cedars. And so you have a new landscaping plan reflecting that. It's attached to the narrative, but we submitted a larger one for the board to review as well. And the size of the pool reduced from what was originally, I think, 264 to 260 square feet. So a very minimal sized pool. One of the other concerns that was raised at the hearing was the importance of the 24-foot contour line. And I wasn't present, but my educated guess is that was an effort to protect a secondary dune, which is formed there. And while we're very fortunate to have primary dunes, we're even more fortunate when we get secondary dunes. And we want to protect them and enhance their growth as much as possible. So again, I'd like to introduce Nile, who's going to explain how they're protecting the 24-foot contour line and how they're building in an effort to stay away from the 24-foot contour line.
This particular feature is in the construction protocol, if you want to look at it further. But in principle, what we do is we create a rough horseshoe shape of soldier piles that go on the seaward side of the construction, and the attempt is to remain as close to the building and the pool as possible. After this is done, wood lagging is put in place such that the seaward side of this assembly is undisturbed during construction. And that is the principal purpose of this construction methodology. It is similar to what you would see in a city building where your demising lines are very critical. So we treat the dune line, the 24-foot contours, principally like a demising line, as if it was somebody else's property, and construct landward of that, and don't go on the other side at all. And then it's fairly conventional in this area. It would be timber piles with a grade beam cap, and then the remaining structures stood on top of it till we reached FEMA, and then the house is built, and then the rest of it is backfill.
Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation, Nile. I just wanted to point out to the board one last graphic that we brought with us, which I submitted. Thank you. This one just gives you an idea. It's also in the narrative, page 5. This one gives you an idea of what before and after physically looks like. So on the site and with the existing grade. So as you can see, what was proposed before would actually have slightly violated pyramid. I don't think it was noticed that way, but in truth, it would have needed a slight variance there. So we're really maximizing the height of that building, really taking advantage of all that's allowable under the pyramid law. Under the proposed design, you'll see that we're well within the pyramid. That's very unusual for modern construction to be well within the pyramid. Usually, we're pretty much as close as possible. And that's a result of building, again, on top of the property instead of building with the grade of the property. So I think that graphic is the perfect symbolic representation of what we've tried to achieve here. Thank you. Really. In addition to the standards for meeting that we must meet for issuance of an MRSP, which I've spelled out in detail in the narrative, I'm sure you'll be very thankful to hear that I will not recite them again for you because there are 13 and then another 18. So what I'm going to do is summarize, and you can read it at your leisure instead of tonight at your hearing. Essentially, we've come before you today with a design that addresses the two primary concerns that were raised during the last hearing: mass, scale, compatibility with the neighborhood, and protecting the natural features on this site. The reason we're before you is because we need a natural resources special permit. We meet all dimensional regulations, including all setbacks from dunes, bluff, well, there isn't a bluff, but dunes, beaches, wetlands. We are well outside the scope of jurisdiction. The only reason for the NRSP is the presence, of course, of beach vegetation and just natural dune vegetation. We have proposed a rather comprehensive revegetation plan. If you look at the aerial, you'll notice that the seaward sort of half of the property is, thank you, Tyler, is devoid of vegetation. So we'll be filling that in as per the revegetation plan. I think it's over 2,300 square feet of proposed revegetation that will help reestablish and enhance the existing primary dune and secondary dune as well. We're also proposing an increase in the size of the scenic easement The original scenic easement was 75 feet in length. This one will be 100 feet. Excuse me, which is a 25% increase. As you know, that will protect that area of the property in perpetuity from ever being developed in the future. So that is a permanent protection that cannot be undone by any future board or any future applicant. That is permanent. You'll also be getting, of course, the IA system that's required. So I know that's not part of your analysis, but it is a benefit to the environment. The special permit standards or the special permit jurisdiction is different than when we come before you seeking a variance. Here, the use is assumed to be permitted, provided that you meet the requisites of the permit standards. And here, I believe that we have clearly met all the requisites of those standards and are entitled to issuance of the requested natural resources special permit.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have a minor question only because I looked at the raised walkway that the neighbor had, and you've got
Path.
a 4-foot walking path. What is that going to be? Now I've forgotten the term for a rolling pathway.
No, I believe it's going to be sand.
Yeah.
So we intend to keep it a sand pathway to the
Footpath.
water.
Footpath.
Okay.
So, and that's true. We did call it out in the landscape plan, so you'll see confirmation of that there.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
No, I am
Not
fine.
right now, I'd like to
Like
go
to
from
go
Tyler.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyler?
Good evening. Tyler Borsak for the Planning Department.
Tyler, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So the property is located on the south side of Shore Road in Amagansett. The lot is located between single-family residence to the west and the White Sands Resort Hotel to the east. The parcel is relatively undisturbed oceanfront dune land with well-established beach vegetation throughout the building envelope. The land use regulations governing the parcel have been in place for over 30 years. Those include 100-foot primary dune crest setback, velocity flood zone, beach vegetation, and secondary dune land. With this property having appeared before the ZBA 3 times previously, I was mentioned twice that they had an actual denial. One time they had a hearing in which it was withdrawn before they actually had a determination. So the board has seen it 3 times in somewhat recent years. With that said, it is important to compare those applications to the current proposal in order to determine the differences. In the 2016 denial, the board was clear that they felt the proposed project would diminish and degrade the quality of the dunes and beach vegetation on the property, and noted several aspects that failed to meet the general and NRSP standards of the town code. The board noted that the sprawling design would negatively impact dune and beach vegetation, would not protect the established character of the neighborhood, would not preserve the protected barrier dunes and beaches, would not protect health and safety from flooding and storm damage, and would not ensure the perpetuation and enhancement of natural beauty. In the more recent 2020 denial, the board found that the proposed project was an improvement over the previous application, but a majority found that the nature of the proposal was still not in harmony with and would not promote the general purposes of the East Hampton zoning law. Specifically, a majority of the board found that while reduced, the revised project was still too sprawling and would have a negative impact on the dune and its vegetation, extending beyond the 24-foot contour line. Similar to the 2 previous applications on the property, the applicants are proposing to remove a large portion of the native vegetation that exists on the north side of the property, where the majority of woody duneland vegetation exists, in order to construct the proposed improvements. The amount of clearing has been reduced to try and alleviate this concern with the board by trying to preserve some of the existing vegetation during construction. The applicants have also included a landscaping plan, which proposes to revegetate some of the disturbed areas after construction is complete, as well as revegetate areas on the parcel which currently have limited vegetation and have been disturbed by neighboring properties. Additional proposed mitigation includes the 100-foot scenic easement, as was already mentioned, on the parcel. Overall, the project appears to be very similar to the 2020 application with small reductions in the gross floor area of the residence and total lot coverage. The building footprint has changed from an L-shaped residence proposed in 2020 to a more traditional square footprint with a stepped back second story, which is partially cantilevered over the first story decking. Overall, it appears that the applicants have designed the residence with decking and swimming pool that follows along the 22 and 24-foot contour lines specifically called out in the board's past determinations. This creates a construction envelope that is slightly more seaward at its closest point compared to 2020, but the bulk of the project is further landward. The design places the entire project just landward of the crest of the prominent secondary dune on the property. In previous applications, a significant amount of excavation was required in order to construct the proposed residences. The current application has included a grading plan, which now does show the regrading of a portion of the parcel under the proposed residence, and also shows the amount of fill to be removed and then replaced. It notes 1,950 cubic yards to be removed for construction purposes, and 1,400 cubic yards to be replaced after for final grades. Part of the board's concerns with the early applications on this property was the amount of excavation required, which was reduced in later applications. The retaining wall proposed for the lower level parking area may require some significant removal of soils. Looks like somewhere between 4 and 8 feet, but the board should be aware of that kind of construction that's going on while making a determination for the project. The applicant noted that the previous application did not meet pyramid regulations and that the current design does. With the stepped back second story, it now conforms to pyramid and also is less looming over the road, which is one of the board's concerns previously. The topography of the parcel, in addition to FEMA regulations, adds an extra challenge to the design parameters on this property, and it appears that the building plans have adequately addressed those issues. Similar to the previous applications, the planning department's main concern with the project, or any project on this parcel, is the protection of secondary dunes and retaining the dune land characteristics. The current proposal shows construction slightly landward of the secondary dune crest, as well as excavation of the landward side of the secondary dune. Secondary dunes are protected natural features under the town code, and the planning department has recommended in the past keeping all construction on the property landward of the northern 24-foot contoured elevation to keep construction back from the crest of the secondary dune, as well as limiting excavation of that dune topography to maintain the integrity of the dunes and benefit that they provide. The applicants appear to be attempting to keep all construction landward of the 24-foot contour, and the amount of excavation should be examined by the board to see if they feel that enough consideration has been taken into the preservation of this area. The board should examine this application in light of their previous denial and determine if enough changes have taken place which address the board's previous concerns, or if more work needs to be done in order to better meet the NRSP and general standards of the town code. I did include a comparison, which I've done before for the board in the existing conditions memo. You'll probably see it. I can bring it up on screen if you'd like. It's the 2020 denial and the current proposal on top of one another. The 2020 denial is in red, gives you an idea of what's been reduced and changed. Essentially, the 2020 denial was a big square, and the current one is sort of more an arrow shape, if you want to call it that, to stay behind that 24-foot contour line. But it's in the existing conditions memo, unless you want me to bring it up.
I want to show us.
Sure.
I can't find it right. Oh, okay.
So anything in red would be the survey from 2020. You can see the L-shaped residence here. This is where the swimming pool was. This was all decking out here. It doesn't show up. But this square envelope essentially right here is what was proposed previously. The gray outline would be the current proposal. So like I said, comes out slightly more landward, but again, it stays behind that 24-foot contour, which meanders through here. I provided the board this on past occasions. I felt that it's a helpful tool to be able to compare and contrast what was proposed and what is proposed.
Where is the 20? I can't see the 24 contour line. Doesn't the pool go right up to it?
More or less, the 24-foot contour line starts back here, comes up, the tip of it's out here, and then it comes back in like this. So they're essentially following it on these edges here. Let me pull the regular survey back up, it's a little easier. So they're essentially following that 24-foot contour line right here, and then it's further off back on the sides and ends around here on this side.
Any other questions? No. Good? Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the public that would like to address this application? Come on up. Who are you?
Hi, Nick Gregory, 23 Shore Road.
Your attorney?
No,
Oh,
no,
you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Would it be possible to show the picture of the dune?
Picture from the,
GIS
Yeah,
or-
picture.
Right here?
That one?
Yes. So I'm here representing neighbors in the surrounding houses, Carol Herman, Hank Herman, Maureen Satinsky, Dan Satinsky, Malcolm Carfrey, John Whitaker, David Sonnenberg, and Shelley Sonnenberg. It seems from what we've read in the new proposal of 22 Shore Road that there's the belief that the neighborhood wants to stop construction of anything in this location. And that is not the case. We are simply concerned about the aspects of the proposal, considering the importance of protecting the dune structure, which will be proposed by the proposed construction. Our issues in particular are as follows. We would ask that the location of the current design be moved closer to the road. This would minimize dune disruption, which has always been our primary concern and priority. This has been a critical point raised by the board itself in all previous denials and has been raised again in Tyler Borzak's technical analysis memorandum. We would ask that the basement and underground garage be removed from the plan. None of the other houses in the neighborhood on the ocean side have basements. Additionally, only 2 houses have garages, and they are at grade level. We would also ask again that the swimming pool be removed from the plan. A swimming pool will dig out more of the dune, and that makes it an unnecessary and damaging accessory. The applicant has compared their plan to the other houses in the neighborhood, all of which were built there before there was a dune. The neighborhood used to be flat, and now there's very large dunes that have built over the last 30 years. And as noted by the applicants, there was no office of the NRSP in 1984. So most of what was done at that time was grandfathered in, including the walkways, a lot of the decking. Respectfully, we don't think you can compare hot tubs that are built on decks to an in-ground swimming pool that requires excavation. That is comparing apples to oranges. The applicant has mentioned that all vegetation happens to be on the road side of the dune. This is in their application that we read. And that beyond that dune, it is fairly naked. In reality, the vegetation that currently exists in this picture has majorly increased the dune size over the last 20 years. I've lived there for 10 years, and that dune has grown maybe 15 feet due to all that vegetation that's there now. Removing the majority of this would be taking away what has contributed so much growth to the dune. In previous hearings, it was established that there is no difference between a primary and secondary dune. I think that that's actually a law. It's either a state law or it's an East Hampton town law. But in previous hearings, we've established that the two are connected and that they're actually one. These dunes now protect the neighborhood from flooding, from past and future hurricanes. In the past, the neighborhood has scrambled to put sandbags in the parking lot to save the area from flooding. In summary, our request to the applicant is to locate the home closer to the road. There are houses that have been located closer to the road, so I know that this is possible, and they're on the beach side. Remove the underground garage and the basement with its concrete walls and eliminate the pool, which requires unnecessary dune excavation in the highest part of the dune. By placing the house entirely on posts and eliminating all concrete slabs, the impact of the dune would be significantly minimized. The applicant could get a 2697 square foot house with decking listed on the second floor. This would still provide the master deck facing south and the rear second floor deck facing north. And protected parking could exist underneath the house at grade level with a gravel driveway. Moreover, if this house were to be done entirely on pilings, using a long reach excavator to push the pilings into the ground, that would minimize damage done to the dunes and by any types of machines needed to excavate.
Can you wrap this up, please?
Sorry?
You wrap?
Sure. We would ask that the supplementary information on the amount of cut and fill, which has only been submitted recently, which we haven't had a chance to review at all. We would like the planner and the town engineer to review it. And we'd like to ask the board to keep the public hearing open for a month so that we have time for an attorney and other experts to look at it and come back to discuss dune impacts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to address the board? Matt?
You have one caller holding.
Okay, you want to let him in?
Let him in. Okay. Last four digits, 6234. You are live.
Hello,
Yeah,
caller.
my name is Jonathan Wallace. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, where do you
Can you hear
reside?
me?
Where do you reside?
I'm sorry?
Where
Yes,
do
I
you
live on
reside?
Dolphin Drive. I'm a neighbor. I live a couple of
Okay.
streets away.
Okay, do you swear
So
affirm to tell? Excuse me, do you
I'm happy to.
Excuse me.
I'm happy
Do you
to swear, but I do happen to be an attorney.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So I endorse and agree with what the previous speaker told you about this property. I'd like to add one detail, and that's that I'm presently on the Secretary of State of New York's corporate lookup website, and I am not finding any company, whatever, either domestic or foreign, with the name 22 Shore LLC. That really underlines the fact that as a quasi-judicial agency exercising substantial independence and discretion with which a court wouldn't even, would be very loath to interfere, as the prior decision, which I read, indicated. It seems to me, respectfully, that it's part of your job to know that, you have an applicant who actually can be held responsible and be on the hook. The process of revegetating a dune is not something that's done in an hour or a day. It requires an ongoing attention, maintenance, and support. The very knowledgeable attorney and architect who spoke to you are not on the hook for that work. And at this point, I'm not certain that you actually have an entity that is taking responsibility. So I would put that before you as one more thing to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane? Hi, Jane.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jane Meering, 32 Ocean Lane, Amagansett.
Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, thank you. The neighbors obviously have represented themselves. I'm not a direct neighbor. I think I've been before this board and I've talked about my concerns about ocean-facing properties and natural resources special permits, so I will only say two very quick things. Number one, I guess I didn't understand, I mean, I understood what they said, that they worked very, very hard to protect that 24 contour line, but when I look at the plan and when Tyler showed the line, I guess I'm not understanding how in the course of construction that part would not be compromised. So that was sort of my first question. And then also the pool and the deck, I would ask the board to, as you will, consider whether that's compatible with, I think it's 255-551D, whether still the pool and the deck are a need, or if there can be proper enjoyment of the property without that. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Denise, you want to come back up?
Denise Shern, again, for the applicant, just briefly, in response to a couple of the questions that were raised. With regard to the LLC, I believe I heard that you were on the New York State website. This is a Delaware LLC, so that's why you wouldn't find it on there. But I will confirm that, obviously, and provide counsel with either the correct name of the LLC if I'm incorrect, or provide her with evidence that it is the correct LLC. With respect to the primary and the secondary dune being the same thing, they're not the same thing under the town code. Under the town code, the jurisdiction for setback variances is regulated by the distance from the primary dune to the structure. Secondary dunes are clearly very important. I articulated that during my presentation, and we are trying to protect it by two means: staying in front of it, first of all, not building on it as other structures were, and by the support system for the pool that's going to be installed will actually provide a support system for that dune too. And I have no problem with holding the hearing open. I would like to review the letter that was read from if it was submitted to the record by the gentleman that was up here, and have an opportunity to respond to that as well. The documentation regarding cut and fill and the revegetation plan was in our narrative. What I was saying is that I submitted larger versions of it tonight, just in case it was difficult to read the smaller versions. That's all I have to say.
Can I ask if the drawings that you demonstrated tonight here, are they become part of the record?
They are, sir. They're right there.
They're in that.
They're in that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just want Neely to address the one concern about the basement.
Yeah. So I'll sort of tie that into I'll tie two answers into the one comment. So again, the nature of construction is set up such that we will pile drive soldier piles just landward of the 24-foot contour line. By doing that, we can slip in cribbing and shoring so that we can excavate gradually to not touch the seaward side of the dune. This allows for the construction to create flat plains that are not raised above the grade. If you cut the grade and do not have the horseshoe-shaped protection, the land will simply cave in. So to be able to construct flat, we need to support the excavation. And that is principally the purpose of doing that. What that results in is concrete piers that sit above grade and retaining walls that are only designed to be breakaway. So it is not a basement. It is not a basement. We cannot sheetrock this place. All electric has to remain above BFE. It just creates a, let's call it a void below to be able to use for storage or parking. It is not in that sense. It's a result of the design. It's not a outcome that we sought and then put the design over, if that makes sense. The question about moving the house forward, obviously, we discussed the pyramid that's on the record. You can see that. And secondarily, an engineer reviewed this, Ed Armus. The septic system is pretty much maxed out in terms of its setback to all property lines, including the structure. So for multiple reasons, the structure cannot be moved closer to the street.
So the concrete beneath the structure is not structural. It's all breakaway.
Yes, absolutely.
The structure then, the structure for the house itself is based on piles.
Correct. So
Wow.
it's piles with a concrete cap and concrete piers, and then everything around is breakaway. Even though it retains soil, in the event of a flood, it's designed to be breakaway. No size is larger than 4 feet.
Thank you. So how long are we going to keep the record open?
And how would you like us to do this? Do you want?
We've asked, he's
Been open.
30 days.
you've asked for 30 days.
You got bills.
Right, so so I don't want to go back and forth, like, are we both going to submit in 30 days? Is that the idea?
I think that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough.
This is just for the public record.
That's correct.
I thought somebody asked
That's
for the
correct.
hearing to be left open. We're not leaving hearing open.
Just the record.
So just written submission for 30 days.
Right. No. You have enough to submit in writing. We'll review it.
Thank
Joan,
you.
you want to make a motion?
Submitting what you read out loud. Nicholas, you read out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
You submitted now?
Can I get a copy of that?
In the Met, are you all good?
I'm sorry, I was just waiting for you.
No,
I
no.
didn't hear the motion, so.
No, I haven't made it.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait.
I just wanted, you're getting a copy, so you're good?
Yes, I'm gonna get a copy. Thank you very much.
In the matter of 22 Shore LLC at 22 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-131-08-07, I make a motion to close the hearing and leave the record open for 30 days.
I'll second it.
I concur. I concur.
I concur. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
What? Should have thought of it sooner. Loan it to you.
Sure, yeah, I can, you want me to take care of this? Or you want to do the whole thing? You want me to take care of this?
No, it's too busy celebrating mommy too.
There's
You haven't covered yet?
Okay, well,
I am.
we'll now go into our work session. We have an administrative application, which is John Herlin at 183 3 Mile Harbor, Hog Creek Highway Springs, Suffolk, tax map number 300-94-1-2.1, as that's the reconstruction of a bulkhead. Brian?
With the share screen. Oh, okay.
Rubber cans for this.
Thank you, board members. So this is the Herlin property in 3 Mile Harbor Road. This is a application to reconstruct and place a bulkhead. Properties in an area of hardened shoreline. It's coastal erosion zone 3. There is an existing bulkhead. I'll show you some photos in a moment that consists of a concrete block retaining wall. It's dilapidated. The elevations of the bulkhead vary in height from an average of 8 feet, like 7.8 feet above sea level at the northern end of the property, to about 6.5 feet at the southern end of the property. The application is to replace this bulkhead, and I'll just show you, an example of it from the northern end of the property. This is the condition of the bulkhead now. And the application is to replace it with a vinyl bulkhead, untreated timber whalers, and pilings to a uniform elevation of 8 feet above sea level. The construction access is proposed from the upland of the driveway, and the planning department would require revegetation of the areas seaward of the bluff crest that are disturbed by the removal of the concrete retaining wall and the construction of the new bulkhead.
You're not looking for any additional planting? It's a mitigation?
No. We haven't requested it now. This is, the house is pretty close to the shoreline. It's in place replacement of a bulkhead in a fairly extensive hardened stretch of shoreline.
Can you go back to that picture?
Sure, I have a couple of others as well.
So the re-veg is basically what you see there, right? So in a sense, is that what you're saying to the?
Well, this is the bluff crest up here.
That's the bluff crest. So below the bluff crest will all be revegetated.
And anything disturbed, yes. It's pretty weedy right now. This is probably tree of heaven, wineberry. It's weedy.
Right.
That wall doesn't look like it's 8 foot tall. Am I missing something? Is that a step in the wall there?
There's a step in the wall here.
Okay.
I'll show you a couple of other photos. And it's not an even height. So the top of the wall is up here in these photos. This is probably a better shot that shows you roughly how it ties in to the property next door. There will be about a 1.5 foot height increase at the southern end of the property where these two meet. The adjoining property will get a notice of the application and have an opportunity to comment if they have a concern about how that height change ties into their property.
I don't have an issue with it. Do you?
No, I don't.
I don't have an issue with it.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Can I make a motion?
Okay.
In the matter of the application of John Hurlin, 183 3 Mile Harbor, Hog Creek Highway in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-94-1-2.1, I make a motion to approve the application going administratively.
A second.
Concur.
I concur.
I concur, thank you. Next, we have other decisions. We have 11 Georgia Place, Montauk LLC, at 11 Georgia Place, Montauk, and tax map number 300-19-7-32.2, and that's a request to reopen the record hearing to accept the updated survey. You have somebody from Montauk?
I'll make a motion in the case of 11 Georgia Place, Montauk LLC, 11 Georgia Place, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-7-32.2, to reopen the record to accept the updated survey.
Second.
I concur. Concur.
I concur, thank you. Next, we have Shaggy Shag LLC at 774.
Do we have the acceptance of? So, I'm sorry, do we close it again then? Or it just
Oh, do we
automatically
close?
closes?
Good point. We have it? So then we can close the hearing. Good point. Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
Then in the case of 11 Georgia Place, Montauk LLC, 11 Georgia Place, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-19-7-32.2, I'd like to make a motion to close the record at this time.
Second.
Concur. Concur.
I concur.
Keeping us on our toes.
Thank you. Yeah, that was good.
In your case, honest, yeah.
Next, we have Shaggy Shack LLC at 774 Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-49-4-5. And that is to officially open the rehearing for May 16th, 2023. And board members, I confirmed this with council. We're going to reopen for rehearing, but it still is going to need to be posted, correct?
That's correct, because we didn't give the rehearing date at the actual
That's
close of the end of the last hearing. So the applicant understands that it'll have to be reposted, and the town will repost the notice as well.
So it's a continuation where the first hearing will all be incorporated into this one?
Yes, and there's a lot more documents that
Okay.
as well.
Great. Do we
Okay.
have a motion for that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for Shaggy Shag LLC at 774 Montauk Highway, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-49-49-04-05 to reopen the hearing for continuation on May 16th, 2023.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Brian, you had, good night, Brian. Thank you.
Brian's late. Just getting to Evans.
Next, we have Hillary Evans at 22 Broadview Road, Amagansett. Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-104-2-29.1, and that's a modification of a 2022 NRSP to add additional sand and beach grass to a coastal bluff face. And I don't know if everybody's read the recent submittal on that. So anybody need to discuss that, or are we ready to move ahead?
I'm ready to move ahead.
This has to get done. I mean, it should,
Yeah, it has to get
it should
done.
have already been.
Yeah, I agree, and
Been done.
they're committed to moving ahead quickly on this, which
Okay,
is
but this
important, and I think it's good we questioned it last.
Yes,
year.
yes, it
think
is.
so.
Because there was a thing about, this will be sand only, not sand wrapped in anything,
No, that's,
just
No
sand.
geocubes.
No cubes, yeah.
all right, we have a motion.
Okay, in the matter of Hillary Evans, 22 Broadview Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-104-02-29.1, I make a motion to accept the proposed modification of the 2022 NRSP.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Brian, you're welcome to stay for the extensions of times
Want the
if you want.
extension of time? I think they're for
Thank you.
what was it, a bikini wetland? I think it's
Yeah.
those properties. Yeah.
Oh, these are the bikini
Yeah.
wetlands. That's right, that's right. These are the ones. That's right. Good night.
Night,
That's
thank
right.
you.
Night.
We have extensions of time, and that we have Lynn Eichner at 39 Fairview Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk, Tax Map Number 300-19-8-14.1, extension of a 2019 determination.
So the two extensions of time, they're right next to each other. So the one is the southern lot, which is the 39 Fairview. They're not old applications. They're fairly recent. They did submit for building permit requests, and I inspected the properties. The sediment fencing was good at that time. That was back in August. Morgan inspected it, and it looked like they were dilapidated, so they'll need to fix the sediment control fencing, but that doesn't prevent them from getting an extension of time. They're fairly straightforward. Nothing's really changed on the property. They're fairly recent approvals. So we don't have any concerns with it.
Yeah, I have no problem with them, and I saw the sediment control passing it, so I'm glad Morgan picked up on that.
Yeah.
When are they going to fix it? Soon.
Terry, you want?
Yeah, so can I do both of them at the same
Yes.
time, or should I do them separately?
Sure.
Okay, so make a motion to approve the extensions of time for Lynn Eichner at 39 Fairview Avenue in Montauk, tax map 300-19-8-14.1, and Lynn Eichner at 49 Fairview Avenue, Montauk, tax map 300-19-08-15 and 16. Period.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. We next have resolutions. We have Michael Mara at 569 Fireplace Road in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-95-5-39.2. Council.
This was to allow a lot of 100,000 square feet, an affordable accessory apartment, which within a detached structure. The Fort County's application is supposed
Excuse me 1 second. Hope, can you please speak into your microphone? Nope.
There's no light on it.
Okay. Okay, continue. It's all right. Go ahead.
Want me to go to the podium? I know the podium.
It's okay.
Okay. The applicant would be significantly expanding the habitable space and therefore converting the property with an increase in density, which the record does not indicate otherwise. This relief is extraordinary as applicants asking for approximately 25% relief from the town code. The lot is significantly smaller than what's required to approximately the size of an affordable housing apartment, and as such, the board found that the increase in density of the lot will decrease natural resources or put additional strains on properties. Therefore, the entire board voted to deny the application.
Okay.
Okay. In the matter of the application of Michael Mara, 569 Springs Fireplace Road in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-95-5-39.2. I make a motion, we accept the determination as written.
Second.
I
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. We have next is 57 Hampton Lane at LLC. At 57 Hampton Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-174-7-19.
Application was to remove existing walkways, decking, and replace with new decking, walkways, and stairs. To remove an approximately 145 square foot portion of the residence and replace it with decking to construct an approximately 165 square foot addition. Raise the residence to meet FEMA first floor elevations and reconstruct an existing outdoor shower. Relocate the existing driveway and construct an upgraded sanitary system. This was for a natural resource special permit along with several variances. The board found that the applicant is committed to restoring the property while maintaining the wetlands on the property and preserving the Alfred Schaefer cottage to the best of their ability. The property is constrained and there are additional options for the applicant when it comes to the granting of the relocation of the driveway and the walkways. Therefore, the board's goal of limiting environmental impacts and redevelopment close to the wetlands by denying the granting of the walkways and driveways are in line with past precedent. The applicant will revegetate the parcel, and the zoning board feels that the short-term effects of the clearing of the property will outweigh any long-term effects of the property except for the walkway and the driveway. And the property will be serviced by a new on-site wastewater treatment system. As such, the majority of the board found in favor of the application, denying the driveways and the walkway. Member Berger also denied the proposed deck and the outdoor shower.
Is that all? Okay. I only approve the addition, right?
Yes.
Is that what it? Okay.
Oh, yeah, we denied the driveway, the walkway, the proposed deck.
In the matter of 57 Hampton Lane LLC, 57 Hampton Lane, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-174-7-19, I make a motion to adopt the decision as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Next, we have 7 Beach Plum LLC at 7 Beach Plum Court, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-110-2-19.4.
Application was to allow ground level decking, second story decking, a walkway and outdoor shower with slate wall to remain within the dune crest setbacks. This did require a natural resource special permit for all the improvements and one variance for the lower ground level decking. The determination does make it clear that although the notice went out asking for a variance on the walkways, it did come up during the hearing that they actually do not need a variance for the walkways. We did condition the walkways, however, to remain as a roll-up walkway as one of the conditions. The board finds that the roll-up walkway is designed in a way to allow those transversing over the walkway to minimize traffic patterns, allow the walkway to be rolled up when needed. The outdoor shower is built into an existing wall on the property and within the building envelope and causes no additional stress on the natural resources. However, the zoning board decided that the Beach Plum Park subdivision clearly and carefully laid out the building envelopes for the purpose of protecting natural habitats, and by allowing the ground level decking outside of this envelope would set a precedent within the community for future growth close to native vegetation. As such, the entire board found for approval for a natural resources special permits on the second story decking, the walkways, the outdoor showers, and denied overall everyone on the board the ground level decking.
In the matter of 7 Beach Plum LLC at 7 Beach Plum Court, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-110-2-19.4, I make a motion to adopt the decision as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Next, we have Donna Oliva at 305 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-84-3-11.
This determination is amended. The application was to allow an approximate 32 square foot roof deck extension and approximately 250 square foot of brick and sand patio to remain inside setbacks. We did approve this application. However, we conditioned the application on gutters and leads. I spoke to Tyler about this. The applicant felt that the property was so constrained that they couldn't meet that condition. It wasn't talked about at the hearing either. After talking to Tyler, we both agreed that that condition could come out and it wouldn't change anything on the subject premises at all. So this does just remove the one condition for gutters and leads to be removed on the amended determination.
In the matter of Dominic DeLiva at 305 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 300-084-03-11, I make a motion to adopt the amended decision as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you.
We have minutes approval.
We skipped over the minutes.
We didn't have
Skip
it.
something?
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
What? The minutes?
yeah, it was
So we
not on
can't
the
do it?
agenda, so we'll catch it next time, I think.
Has to be on the agenda? We can't do minutes?
She's all ready.
Huh? Okay, so we'll table it. Huh?
All right, I'll turn it over to the vice chair to do the honors.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to close the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals work session, public hearing and work session for April 25th, 2023 at 8:47 PM.
Second.
Concur.
I concur. Thank you.